This episode is brought to you by Meow Wolf. Play like a kid, pay like a kid this summer at Meow Wolf Denver. July 23rd through August 11th, you can grab your adult tickets for kids' prices for a limited time only. Come explore solo, bring your BFF, or even bring some actual kids for a cosmically cool adventure. Visit meowwolf.com/Denver to get your tickets now. Again, that's meowwolf.com/Denver to get your tickets before mom drags you back to school clothes shopping again. Ugh. This episode is brought to you by Soul Community Planet. You don't have to go away to get away. SCP Hotels in Colorado Springs is offering a special discount for Colorado locals, so you can save on your summer adventure today. Book with code CITYCAST for 20% off weekday stays. Rediscover the joy and beauty of our great state. Book your Colorado Springs locals getaway today at scphotel.com/Colorado Springs and make sure to use the code CITYCAST. That's scphotel.com/Colorado Springs. Today on CityCast Denver, dating in Denver. There's a lot of stereotypes, like the city being overrun with men, or people afraid of commitment, or those dudes who just won't slow down their extreme sports game to find the one. But what's actually happening for people seeking romance in the Mile High? Today, I'm sitting down with two reporters to get the real scoop on the dating scene in Denver. Today is Thursday, July 25th. I'm Bree Davies, and here's what Denver's talking about. Westword reporter Hannah Metzger and Denver Post reporter Megan Ulu-Lani Boyanton, welcome back to CityCast Denver.
Thanks so much for having us.
So good to be here.
So you both have been on the Denver dating beat as reporters, but I have to ask, have either of you been out and about in Denver in the last few years dating?
I moved here, May 2022, and yes, I was dating that summer.
So you've had some direct experience.
I have.
Hannah, what about you?
I have not, unfortunately. I've been dating the same guy since high school.
Oh, well, congratulations.
Wow.
So I've got zero firsthand experience, but
This
I'm
is
in
where you
my
put your reporter hat on.
Yeah, and I'm in my mid-20s. I'm watching all my friends and my sisters go through it.
I think a lot of dating is just anecdotal too.
Yes,
right? What we hear from
anecdotal
our
evidence.
friends every day, what they're experiencing. I also have not, I am married and I have not dated for over 13 years. So it was pre the dating apps. So this has been so fascinating for me to learn about. But Hannah, you wrote a piece a few weeks ago for Westword entitled "Gotta Match: Why Dating in Denver is a Dumpster Fire," which is a big statement to make. What makes dating in Denver so shitty?
So I spoke to a lot of matchmakers nationally and locally, and what they told me is that everyone thinks dating in their city is terrible, but in Denver's case, it actually is harder to find matches than in other cities. Because
so the professionals have trouble.
Yeah, they're saying it is more difficult here because they are struggling with finding people who want to settle down and commit and have a long-term relationship. What they've found is that Denver has a reputation as a very transitional city where people come when they're young to hang out with their friends and explore nature and hike and ski, but they're not here looking to get married. They're going to move back home to do that. They're just here for a good time, and then when they're ready to plant roots, they're going to move away.
So that really impacts what happens in a relationship if you have one here. I feel like there was a quote in one of your stories too, Megan, about this where someone was like, yeah, I'm here, but I'll go back to the Midwest when I'm ready.
Yeah, well, I think she said that she was looking for a husband here, but she said that she's
take him.
Right. She said that she's been having difficulties, and she was like, if I moved back to Illinois, I could be snapped up like that in a year.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe she was looking for a different pool of people?
I think so.
Or what people's interests are, because this was something that the stereotypes about Colorado really come through when we talk about dating, right? People that want to, I don't remember, one of you talked to, or there was a quote from one of these dating experts about a gentleman who was like, I want someone who skis, but they have to ski at the same level as I do. And it's like, actually, are you just looking for a bro friend?
Probably.
But I wonder, do the stereotypes kind of, I don't know, weigh us down a little bit when it comes to the dating scene?
That's what a lot of my matchmakers were saying. It was one of them who had the skier anecdote. But they said several of the matchmakers brought up skiing, where they were like, it's already so hard to find people who want to settle down, but then we're limiting it to such superficial traits where we're like, but they have to do the exact same activities as I do and at the same skill level because I'm going hiking and I'm not going to slow down for you, so you have to keep up with me. And it sounds like, yeah, the stereotypes definitely come into play.
What did you think about the stereotypes, Megan? Like, how do those play into what people's experiences are here dating? I mean, we've mentioned them, some of them, skiing, hiking, being very outdoorsy.
Well, I think that y'all saw that report that came out recently, right? That I know that we wrote a story about it at the Post, that Coloradans really do live up to our stereotypes of hiking and biking and smoking and going to concerts.
Craft brews, weed, concerts at Red Rocks.
Exactly. What I found from my reporting, that especially hearing from single women here, that the stereotype that they continually run into among straight men in particular is this Peter Pan syndrome. Essentially, guys in probably like their 30s, 40s, who never want to grow old. And in Denver, I guess you don't really have to because you're always surrounded by, all of these youthful activities like hiking, biking, snowboarding, parties, things like that. So they have found that they are finding men who want to have a partner in these activities, like Hannah said, but not wanting to, I don't know, commit entirely or, fulfill maybe the boyfriend aspect of it.
This is just I'm just laughing because it's just okay, so you just are immature and that's the problem? So when we're talking about straight men and straight women in these relationships. I think that's a good caveat. We'll get into that a little bit later. But Megan, you also reported on these two brothers who were so desperate to find their other brother a date that they actually took out a billboard that said, help our brother Chris find true love. And it even has a website, which deserves its own separate conversation. I have questions about the intent of that website. But seriously, in the age of dating apps, which seems to be a main source for folks meeting people, why did these guys see the need to take out an advertisement for their conventionally attractive, very Colorado stereotype seeming brother to meet someone?
So I guess that he just moved here this spring, and he is one of the... So there's two older brothers, they're twins, and then the younger brother. And one of the twins and the younger brother, they are both either... One just got married, the other one is recently engaged. Both met their partners on the apps. And so now I guess that their brother Chris, the one that the campaign is targeting... he has said for years that he's wanted to settle down. And so the brothers, I guess, went behind his back and put together this campaign. And he did not realize until weeks in, and this was after they already had a billboard, they had taken out a commercial. He found out because they got so much attention, they went on Good Morning America. And a friend sent Chris the video clip, and he told me that he was like, I thought that it was AI or a deep fake of my brothers. And then he called his twin and was like, what is this? And he was like, about that. And so he didn't even know that a commercial had run until my story published.
No.
And then he texted me and said, wait, there was a commercial? So this was all very much an act of brotherly love.
Wow. But isn't this seem extreme, you guys?
I think it's hilarious, but I think they did it with the intention of they really wanted to catch the attention of the social media app The League.
Oh, I don't know about The League. What's The League?
I don't know. I also when I was single, I didn't.
Okay, so it's
I
some
wasn't
sort
on
of
that app.
It's a dating app of
yes,
some kind. Okay,
it is. But since they had both met their partners on The League, they wanted to try and partner with The League to try and find him. Yes.
Okay.
And I guess since then he's gotten a few matches. He's gone on a few dates. So apparently things are looking up for Chris. So wishing him the best of luck.
Well, Hannah, a dating expert told you that the demand for dating services has actually only grown since 2000, even though everyone seems to be utilizing free dating apps. What does that say about Denver's dating scene?
I think that just shows how ineffective people are finding the dating apps because everyone is on them. They say 3 in 10 adults in the US use dating apps. More than 50% of adults under 30 use dating apps. But only about half of users report a positive experience. So I think what's happening is that 78% of Tinder users are men. So the women are getting overwhelmed with these hordes of men coming at them through the dating apps. And they're feeling like it's hopeless, or they're relying on like superficial traits to narrow down these hordes.
Sure, which is what all these rely on, right?
It's what you have to do. If you've got 100 messages, you're like, okay, only people
Stupid
over
hat,
6'2".
dumb mustache. It's like playing Guess Who.
Yeah. And then the men end up feeling like rejected and invisible because they're not getting responses. They don't know why.
But it's also like there's not that many women for the amount of men.
Yeah, for the amount of men that are there. And it sounds like, from my dating experts, they said the ratio of people who are seeking their services or coming to their matchmaking events are 10 women to 1 man. So the women are coming. They exist, but they're seeking the serious relationships. If you're paying for a matchmaker, it's because you want to get married. You want a long-term relationships. If you're going on Tinder,
you're maybe just looking
you
for
might
a
just be
hookup
looking for a hookup. So it seems to be that there's like a disconnect between what everyone's looking for.
So maybe the dating pool would be again, we're talking about heterosexual relationships. The dating pool might be more even in reality, but the reality is women are looking in one place, men are looking in another place. Women, for the most part, are looking for something different than the men are looking for. So there's just a lot of not connecting.
I think the angle that I've wanted to explore lately is, are dating apps dead in a way? Are they obsolete? Because
have they run their course, kind of?
Right. Because when I was single in Denver, I found so much better success with just like meeting people in the wild, as they say. I mean, that's how I met my my current boyfriend.
When you say in the wild, how did you meet him?
I met him literally in the wild on a camping trip. It was a friend's birthday, and the birthday girl was like a mutual friend of both of us. So it was
like a loose friend circle.
Yes,
situation.
Exactly. Just showing up for a camping trip, and he showed up later in the day, and we hit it off. But before, I met him, I mean, I had met other, I'd met a guy I went on a date with at Red Rocks. I met a guy on the Cherry Creek Trail who asked me on a date. So I found that, and I had went on, I think, a couple of dates on the apps, but I just found that the ones that happened in the wild, I think that it's just, it's more conducive to like figuring out quickly if there's any sort of chemistry or like attraction. I feel like you just get a better read on a person when you're, face to face, even if it's just at like a bar or something, versus, when you're trying to screen through 25 different matches, you just woke up and I don't know. For me, I wasn't a big fan of the apps.
Just didn't work for you. Yeah, Hannah. So since you met your significant other in high school, I just have to ask, do you think if he was on an app today, you would swipe on him?
I'd like to think that I would, but,
right?
But men take terrible photos, to be honest. So.
And then they post them.
Yeah, just proudly. So it's hard to know. I'm trying to think, what photos would he even put on a dating app, especially if I hadn't taken the photos. So I'm like, if these are just pictures he chose himself, maybe not.
Isn't that? I wonder about that because like when I met my husband, I met him because I actually interviewed him for a story for Westword. But when I went to his Facebook page to look at him, the photo was terrible and I couldn't really see his face, and I didn't think twice, honestly. And it makes me think like I might have also, there's a picture of him with a fedora. I give him so much shit about this. He's like, please be nice to me.
Classic.
He's a great dresser. It just was a moment. But like if he was wearing a fedora, of course I would have swiped right by him. And it wasn't until I met him in person that connection happened. But we did have a great conversation. It was rooted in a conversation over shared interests. And I just often think it's hard to get to that place when you're just swiping through. You don't have that initial conversation that sometimes is the spark, because that, again, terrible photo that your friends let you put on Tinder is not the thing that's attracting people. I don't know. What do you guys think overall about dating apps in general? Like you kind of mentioned this, Megan, but like, are they dead? What did dating experts say, Hannah? Like where are we at with the state of the dating app?
Well, they're still very popular, particularly in Colorado. I think it was Fort Collins had the second most Tinder searches or something
in
like
the
that.
Country.
In the whole country.
That's crazy.
In Fort Collins.
You can probably attribute it to like college campuses and things like that. So they're definitely still very popular. I think the question is if they're yielding the kind of results that you want to see.
People are looking for.
Yeah, and I'd say that's yet to be seen. We'll have to see what happens there.
Hi, I'm David Plotz, the CEO of CityCast. The best way to learn a language is immersion, living where the language is spoken and using it every day. That's how I learned French as a kid. But if that's not in the cards for you this year, you can still learn a language the second best way, and that's with Babbel. I live in a city with a huge immigrant population. You probably do too. And in my hometown, a lot of my new neighbors speak Spanish as a first language, and we have lots of great Mexican and Central American and South American restaurants and stores. I wanted to be able to communicate just a little bit better with some of my neighbors. So I started with Babbel, the science-backed language learning app that actually works. And after just a few extremely enjoyable weeks learning Spanish with Babbel, I've already gotten comfortable ordering at a restaurant and eavesdropping on my girlfriend's conversations with her mom. Look, learning a language isn't always easy, but with Babbel it is fun and it feels useful, basically immediately. That's why Babbel has over 16 million subscriptions sold. Plus, all of Babbel's 14 award-winning language courses are backed by their 20-day money-back guarantee. Here's a special limited-time deal for CityCast listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/citycast. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/citycast. Spelled BABBEL.com/citycast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
This episode is brought to you by Denver Health. Denver Health has introduced a new resource for the community that is completely free and confidential. If you, a loved one, or a patient is struggling with substance use disorder, call 720-928-2127. This hotline offers essential resources and guidance to anyone, even young people over the age of 12, and provides information about treatment options from a place of zero judgment. If you are living with substance use disorder, help is just a call away. And there's no pressure. You get to choose what's best for you. There are absolutely no requirements to participate. This is just a community resource dedicated to helping you navigate your options. Denver Health offers compassionate support and is dedicated to helping you find the best substance treatment resources regardless of the situation. Call 720-928-2127 or visit denverhealth.org/treatment today. That's 720-928-2127 or visit denverhealth.org/treatment. Megan, a few months ago, you dug into the old Menver stereotype, as in Denver is full of men, which was sort of this social phenomenon that surfaced here, particularly in the early 2000s, and portrayed Denver as a place teeming with, assumably straight dudes. Is Menver dead in 2024? What does it look like?
Menver is certainly more balanced out, I think. It's not the same as it was, like you said, in the aughts. One of my friends, I'm their wedding officiant in a couple of months, and they met here in Denver, actually, on the apps. But he moved here in 2008, and he had said, he'd weighed in when I was writing this story, that back then he said that it was very much the case. It was teeming with men. There wasn't a big pool of women to choose from if you're straight. And now in 2024, it's much more balanced. If you look at like the actual census statistics, that's what I found, that a lot of women in the dating scene looking for men, they also don't feel like Menver is a
true statement
anymore. Yeah. But I will say, I think that I do think that the dating scene here is really positive. I mean, I came from the East Coast before this, so I was living in DC, and I will say that's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Because I think that out there, in DC in particular, career is such a priority that truly no one is looking to settle down until like their late 30s, if that. Whereas when I moved to Denver, it felt to me very fresh that my entire friend group that adopted me, they are all made up of relationships. I was like the only single woman, and I found that it was like a very successful dating pool. So I do think that if you maybe come from, I don't know, like a coastal area, like in LA, a New York, a DC, you might find a lot better luck here, just because I did find the men that I talked to were interested in settling down for the most part.
So it's kind of like, maybe what you're comparing it to or coming from. Hannah, your thoughts on Menver? I know this came up in your conversations as well.
Yeah. From what we found, statistically, it was never too much of like a difference between the male and female populations in Denver. And it's only evened out more, as Megan said, as the years have passed. And even now, Denver has a more equal ratio of men to women than Colorado as a whole does. Like we have, we have more women percentage-wise in Denver than we do
in the
whole
state as
state.
a whole.
Yeah, and it's only like 1%
Interesting.
off from the entire country. So it's like there's
So it's
not a lot of numbers
definitely-
to back it up.
Yeah, the numbers are not showing that Menver is really a thing anymore.
Yes.
I'm kind of glad about that, to be honest with you, because I just feel like that kind of hung over us a little bit and portrays it in a certain way that may not reflect the reality of what people are experiencing out in the dating world. And also, I do want to talk about this. Like, it seems like a lot of the information is about straight and heterosexual relationships in both of your findings. What do we know about queer relationships in Denver? Is the outlook just as dismal or confusing, or what does it look like in the queer side of the dating world?
Sure. So I'm queer myself, and I did try to dig into this a little bit in the Menver story just to make sure that, it was somewhat balanced. But I think the issue is that our LGBT community here is still statistically smaller than a lot of major cities, particularly among people who identify as women and in search of women. So I found they had the hardest time. Gay men here have an easier time finding matches, although of course there's still, just the regular difficulties of dating, and they face the same Peter Pan syndrome issues as women seeking men do. But I found that women seeking other women tended to have the hardest time only because the pool here is so small.
Interesting. Hannah, did this come across with dating experts? Did they address this, or are they still really focused on heterosexual relationships?
The dating experts were mostly focused on heterosexual relationships, but in my research, something interesting that I did notice was that people who are part of the LGBTQ community were more likely to use dating apps and more likely to report having a positive experience on dating apps. And I think that makes sense to me in terms of it's more difficult for them to find people out in the wild. Then this seems to be a way for them to be able to make these connections and to find people who share their sexuality and not have to risk approaching someone.
Yeah, going through that process of
Yeah.
even figuring out if someone's on your same page.
Right.
Or, I think that's cool. I get that the dating app sort of creates that initial thing that the hoop you don't have to jump through. It'd be like, we all know why we're here. We all are on the same page, which honestly, I think is part of the problem with straight relationships is a lot of those things are not out there and you're trying to decipher them, where within the queer community, sometimes that communication is just more clear. I don't know. Yeah, I was just thinking about, I've been to a couple of Dyketopia events. They're these lovely comedians, Kate and Lee, that we have on the show pretty regularly. If you're a woman who wants to meet other women, go to a Dyketopia show. It's literally the entire audience, and it's the most welcoming, warm, excited, honest, connecting place I've ever seen for within queer spaces, but for queer women in particular. I just think that is something that's Denver doesn't, if we think about queer bars, they have a hard, especially quote lesbian bars have an even harder time here. So finding community to even feel safe to meet each other, I think, is one of those barriers. But yeah, I don't know. I'd be more interested to dig into the queer side of things too.
And I will say that out of those, when I was on the apps, that was an aspect of it that was really successful for me was, trying to, when I was searching both, men and women, actually being able to have single women with similar interests kind of, in my phone. But just the number of matches alone, it's just, it's 15 men to one woman. So it's pretty, it's dismal statistics when you're trying to find another woman as a woman. But I do have some friends who are queer as well, and they have joined, I think there's a Denver queer women's group that does social events and
Hip Chicks
meetups
Out.
and
Yeah.
And so they'll go to those, and that's how a friend of mine found her girlfriend. So I think that there are avenues here, but I think that it's such a small, tight-knit community here that you're definitely your options are limited.
Sure. Well, I feel like it's been pretty bleak what we've been discussing, but I wonder, in both of your research, did you find any silver linings or things that folks who are in this process right now trying to date in Denver could look forward to or see as something positive?
I think that the good thing about Denver is that in its dating scene, you are so likely to find somebody who shares a similar interests and, is looking for the same things. If there's one way that I would describe Denverites is that we're very fun loving. We all like our activities, whether that's outdoor or in the city. And so I think that even in talking to Chris, who, has just moved here, he lived in New York, and his perspective was really excited because he was like, I just feel like everybody here is so attractive and so successful and so fun. And like, it makes me really thrilled to go on all these dates. And so I do think that is the perception of people who live in Denver. And so I don't think that finding a personality match necessarily is an issue once you do kind of start connecting with people.
Maybe it's about your attitude when you enter the scene. Like, how are you feeling about it?
Definitely.
Yeah. What about you, Hannah? What did you find?
Well, I encountered some people, like I talked to some bartenders and owners of like first date restaurants and stuff like that to get their perspective. And a lot of them were like, I've never heard that Denver has a bad dating scene. Like, it seems very active to me.
Right.
Yeah. And they're saying not only are they seeing all these dates, but they're like, people are meeting here all the time. Like complete strangers, they're not matching on a dating app first. They're meeting here organically, like just as people always have. So these kinds of connections are still happening. And in some circles, like everything seems great here. So
maybe just broaden the places that you go.
Yeah.
The bars that you do hang out at. I mean, I'm thinking about the similar interest thing. My joke is always like, start a band and then you have something to do with other adults, and then you are in a space with other adults who like your shared interest. And this could really apply to anything, but like that was my social circle came from being in a band, and because it gave me a reason to be out and about. And I think that's the struggle too. Sometimes it's like you don't want to just walk into a bar and be like, well, I'm looking for someone, but like that's often what we're doing. Sometimes it helps to have something that's a starting point that you might both have in common.
Definitely. Because also I think that I have some friends who maybe go to bars or a club looking for, a guy, but I'm also kind of like, but you're not, you're not a big partier, you're not a big drinker. Why would you go to a bar?
Point.
That's not, that's not really your environment. Like, maybe like if you're an athlete, like, or somebody who's
city sports leagues.
Or join Volo, like join a run club, like, and then like connect with the people there. I think it's putting yourself like not just like out and about, but like, put yourself in an atmosphere where you might find somebody who's like conducive to your personality. Now, camping is not necessarily where I thought.
Like, it sounds like a very unique situation that you.
Yeah,
you
I'm
found.
a city girl. He's a forester, so he's a very outdoorsy guy. But I think that we were unique in finding just a good balance. But I would usually recommend to people that they, go to environments that they frequent.
Yeah.
Any advice that you would give, Hannah, just based on the folks that you talked to or things that you found?
Yeah, that's a lot of what my matchmaker said as well, is to get yourself out there and do things by yourself. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people, especially my age, will go out and do things, but we'll do it surrounded by 10 of our best friends. And
then you tend to stick to your
friends.
friends.
You're going to stick to those people. It makes it way more intimidating for anyone to approach you. It makes you less likely to approach someone else. So they're like, you don't have to go to a bar or club by yourself, but maybe like go to Cheeseman Park and read a book by yourself, or like join some kind of club, or just go to a concert by yourself, or brewery or something. And I think that just gives people more of an opportunity to meet people.
Yeah.
And they're saying if you're insistent on staying on the dating apps, if that's where you're most comfortable, just make sure that you're so clear with your intentions and you vocalize them really early on, because it seems like that's where a lot of the issues are coming, is just the disconnect from what people are wanting and expecting out of these relationships.
It's a lack of communication, clear communication. Well, that's so interesting. Well, Megan, Hannah, thank you so much. This was really fun.
Yeah, thank you all so much for having me.
Thank you.
And hey, we want to hear from you. What is it like to be single in the Mile High City? Did you find your true love here, or are you still looking? Give us a call on the Denver Singles Ready to Mingle hotline at 720-500-5418 and tell us your story. That number again is 720-500-5418. That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. If you enjoyed this show, why not take a minute to tell your single friend about us? Rate the show wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe to our morning newsletter and learn more about us at denver.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. See ya! I had a couple summers of being a bicyclist, and my butt looked awesome. I will give it that.